I remember them. I remember all of them, as if it were yesterday, under the scorching sun of Galilee, or during the cold nights of prayer on the mountain. I called them from the dusty shores of the sea, from the tax collectors' tables, from ordinary lives shrouded in shadows, to become fishers of souls, bearers of the light that the world would hate. My 12 disciples, faithful to the bitter end, whose names echo through eternity like a lament and a victory. I loved them as brothers, sent them out like sheep among wolves, and watched from the heights of resurrected glory as the darkness devoured them one by one. This is the somber story of their ends, woven with the blood of martyrs, faithful to the promises I made to them. In the world, you will have tribulations, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Listen with a heavy heart, for in their suffering, see the seed of eternal salvation, living examples of unshakable faith, preachings that echo across the centuries, and actions that planted the roots of the church in hostile soils. I begin with Judas Iscariot, the keeper of the purse whose heart was poisoned by greed. A slithering serpent in the darkness, he walked by my side, witnessed miracles that healed lepers and multiplied loaves, but his soul bent under the weight of money, betraying not only me but the gospel of love we preached.
Rabbi, whatever you have chosen.
He betrayed me in Gethsemane,
Let it be.
under the pale moon filtering through the twisted olive trees, with a kiss that burned like hot iron. 30 pieces of silver, the vile price of a lost soul. After my crucifixion, remorse consumed him like devouring flames. Tearing his mind to pieces, he ran to an isolated field, where the wind howled through dry, thorny trees, and there, on a gnarled branch, he hanged himself. His body, swollen with guilt, fell and split open on the rocky ground, spilling his entrails like a divine judgment exposed to the indifferent sky. Judas serves as a dark example, an eternal warning of how greed can corrupt even the closest ones, diverting them from the path of the kingdom and leading to the abyss of betrayal. A reminder that the gospel demands pure hearts, not divided ones. Next, Simon Peter, the impulsive fisherman, the wavering rock that I steadied to build my church upon. He walked on water with me, confessed me as the Christ, and after my resurrection, he preached with fire at Pentecost, converting thousands in a single day, baptizing and healing in my name, becoming the leader of the early church in Jerusalem before carrying the gospel to Rome. He denied me 3 times in the shadowy courtyard of the high priest, while the fire crackled and the rooster crowed like a piercing accusation, bitter tears streaming down his weathered face. But I forgave him by the lake's edge, restoring him to shepherd my sheep, and he became a blazing beacon in the gospel, an example of redemption for those who fall but rise again by grace. In Rome, under the tyrant Nero, whose madness set streets and souls ablaze, Peter was captured by soldiers in gleaming armor with eyes devoid of mercy. Dragged to Vatican Hill, he asked to be crucified upside down, unworthy to die as I did. Imagine the agony. The world spinning upside down, blood swelling his veins, nails piercing his hands and feet into the rough wood, while the wind carried his hoarse voice preaching until his last breath. Peter, the redeemed, found glory in the inverted cross, his death an echo of mine, inspiring generations to lead with humility and unyielding courage. His brother Andrew, the first I called from the fishing nets by the sea, was the one who brought Peter and others to me, starting the chain of faith. He preached tirelessly in Greece, Asia Minor, and Scythia, converting pagans in shadowy temples, performing miracles that shattered idols, and establishing Christian communities in hostile lands, an example of how a simple calling can spread the light to distant nations. He carried the light to Greece and Asia, where pagan temples rose like oppressive shadows. In Patras, an enraged governor condemned him to an X-shaped cross, tilted like an instrument of infinite torment. Bound, not nailed, so the pain would drag on like eternal days. For 2 scorching suns, his twisted body hung there, muscles tearing slowly, sweat and blood mingling as he exhorted the crowd below, converting even the guards with his weak but unbreakable voice. On the 3rd day, when they cried out for his release, he prayed for me to take him, and the darkness enveloped him. Andrew, the faithful introducer, died like a crossed sign in pagan lands, leaving a legacy of persistent evangelism, showing that faith spreads through humble connections and bold preachings. James, son of Zebedee, the son of thunder, whom I rebuked with John for his fury, was one of my closest, present at the Transfiguration and in Gethsemane. He preached with zeal in Jerusalem, converting Jews and Gentiles, and his boldness in the gospel made him the first martyr among the 12, an example of how the fire of faith can burn briefly but ignite the world. In Jerusalem, Herod Agrippa, eager for the Jews' applause,
Into your hands I lay my breath.
ordered his beheading. Dragged to the scaffold under the merciless sun, James forgave his executioner, who, touched by grace, converted and fell beside him. The sword descended with a hiss, his head rolling in the red dust, blood gushing like a sacred libation, his body thrown to the howling dogs in the streets. James, the bold one, departed quickly, but his death kindled bonfires of faith that consumed kingdoms, proving that early martyrdom can sow eternal conversions. John, the beloved, who leaned on my chest at the Last Supper, was the disciple of intimacy, writing my gospel, epistles, and the apocalypse, preaching love in Ephesus, founding churches, and combating heresies. A living example of contemplation and perseverance in faith to the end, he endured exile on the rocky island of Patmos, where waves crashed like eternal whips against jagged cliffs. There, in apocalyptic visions, he saw beasts and angels, amid soul-eroding solitude, revealing mysteries of the end times. In Ephesus, they threw him into boiling oil, bubbles bursting like demons, but he emerged unscathed, purified by the fire, continuing to preach. He lived into deep old age, his body bent like a dry branch, preaching love until natural death took him in whispered peace. John bore invisible scars, a living testimony to the darkness that tried but failed to extinguish him, inspiring the church with writings that illuminate the path to salvation. Philip, who pleaded, "Show us the Father," was the sincere questioner, baptizing the Ethiopian eunuch and preaching in Phrygia and Asia Minor, converting crowds with miracles of healing and exorcisms, establishing communities amid pagan idols, an example of how the search for truth leads to courageous evangelism. He spread the word in Phrygia, facing idols and whips in dark temples. In Hierapolis, for converting the proconsul's wife and many others, he was crucified upside down, stones hurled at his hanging body, nails tearing flesh, bones cracking under impacts, blood dripping into his eyes as he prayed for his tormentors, his voice echoing hymns until the final silence. Philip transformed hate into seeds of eternal belief, showing that simple preachings can topple spiritual empires. Bartholomew, the sincere Nathanael under the fig tree, where I saw him without guile, carried the gospel to India and Armenia, translating Matthew's gospel into local languages, healing the sick and converting polytheistic kings. An example of integrity that draws honest hearts to the faith. He brought the gospel to India and Armenia,
Give me strength to tear down their pride.
where polytheistic kings trembled before the truth. In Albanopolis, they ordered him skinned alive, blades slicing skin in agonizing strips, muscles exposed to the cutting air, blood flowing like red rivers. He screamed but did not renounce. They beheaded him afterward, his head falling like a martyr's crown.
Into your hands I yield. Strengthen me longer.
Bartholomew was stripped of flesh to don glory, leaving a legacy of sincerity that founds churches in distant lands. Matthew, the redeemed tax collector, abandoned his life of taxes to follow me, writing my gospel for the Jews, highlighting prophecies and the kingdom, and preached in wild Ethiopia, converting tribes and kings with teachings on mercy, an example of radical transformation showing how the marginalized can become heralds of grace. He wrote my gospel and preached in savage Ethiopia for preventing a sinful marriage and converting many. Soldiers hacked him with swords, his body in pieces as he prayed on his knees. Blood soaking the arid earth, remains thrown to the hungry river. Matthew paid with his life, but his word endured, inspiring generations with writings that connect the old to the new. Thomas, the doubter who touched my wounds, overcame his unbelief to become a bold missionary, preaching in India, building churches and spiritual palaces, converting Hindus and performing miracles that shook castes. An example of how honest doubt can lead to deep and expansive faith. He went to India to build churches, facing dangers in foreign lands. In Kalamina, for his tireless preaching, spearmen pierced him on the mountain, 4 blades thrusting as he prayed, blood mingling with the dust, hands outstretched like on the cross. His doubt turned to unshakable faith, planting seeds that flourish in Asia to this day. James, son of Alphaeus, the lesser one, was a silent pillar, preaching in Jerusalem, Syria, and possibly Egypt, converting Jews with teachings on justice and humility, leading the church in Jerusalem for years. An example of quiet faithfulness that sustains the community in times of persecution. He preached in Jerusalem and Syria at 94 years old. For his persistent preaching, he was thrown from the temple pinnacle by the Pharisees, surviving the fall only to be stoned and clubbed until his skull shattered. Praying for his enemies amid the blood and stones, James died as an elder martyr, showing that age does not diminish zeal for the gospel. Jude, who asked me about revealing myself to those who love me, preached in Mesopotamia, Armenia, and Persia alongside Simon, healing the sick, casting out demons, and converting pagans with encouraging epistles, an example of devotion that faces the impossible, patron of lost causes. A preacher in Mesopotamia, he traveled with Simon, founding churches amid dangers. For his unshakable faith, he died by axe blows. Strikes.
Into your hands I offer my breath. Let this dawn be yours.
Hacking flesh to pieces, blood splattering like somber rain. As he prayed for his tormentor's salvation, Simon the Zealot, once a revolutionary against Rome, transformed his political zeal into fervor for the kingdom, preaching in Africa, Britain, or Persia with Jude, converting tribes and battling idols.
Hear me, brothers and sisters. The fire of truth is not a blaze to be feared. It is the light that clears the desert night.
An example of how hate can become redemptive love through the gospel. Sawed in half alive in Persia, the blade grinding against bones. Screams echoing in the Persian mountains. His death sealed a life of radical transformation. Thus were my 12 reaped by the world's darkness, but their preachings, miracles, and examples resurrected in eternal light. I called them, sent them, and now they reign with me in the kingdom. May their somber stories, full of sacrifice and victory, illuminate your paths in faith, showing that suffering plants eternal seeds. Amen.